Welcome to this demonstration of MotionBuilder 6. In this video, we're going to take a look at the improvements and enhancements in MotionBuilder 6 in regards to character keyframe animation as well as character setup. The first thing we'll do is set up our character inside of MotionBuilder. This process is called characterization. Characterization involves creating a character node for your character and allowing MotionBuilder to define the skeletal setup of your character. Let's characterize our character and choose biped as the type. I now have access to my character in the Character Controls panel. This allows me to choose the input for my character. MotionBuilder can create a complete FK-IK rig based on the proportions and size of your character. This is a full-body IK rig which gives very intuitive and fluid manipulation and posing of your character in the scene. Let's say, for instance, we wanted to position our character holding onto this circus ball. Using MotionBuilder's control rig, we have the ability to pin off or lock out any one of my character's effector points in space. This gives me a lot of control over posing, manipulating my character in the scene. For instance, here I position the hand on the circus ball. I can now go through and pin it off in translation or rotation. By moving my character backwards now, you can see that the character's hand remains pinned at this position in space. These toggles can be set on and off at any given point while you're manipulating or animating your character in the viewer. The next thing we're going to look at is some of the advancements that we've created for the control rig. Our character's control rig now allows you to extend or go beyond the default control rig that we've created. We can do this by creating auxiliary pivot points or auxiliary effectors. The first thing we're going to create is an auxiliary pivot point in the back of the foot here. I'll position this auxiliary pivot point at the back of the heel, which will give me manipulation control now at the back of the foot rather than at the ankle point. This is a very powerful way for you to extend MotionBuilder's control rig, giving you more control over your character's manipulation in the scene. You can create as many of these auxiliary pivot points as you require. For instance, if you wanted to have multiple pivot points on the front of the character's toe, I simply have to go through and create multiple pivot points and position them at the desired locations. Now that I've got a pivot point at the front of the toe, when we manipulate this, you can see we're going to get a rotation throughout the foot. Let's say we wanted to have the whole foot rotate based off the position of that front point. I'd have to go through and do a rotate around operation with both objects selected. A new workflow enhancement inside of MotionBuilder 6 is the addition of handles. Handles are a flexible tool which allows you to create selection sets or selection groups for organizing and manipulating objects or elements inside of your scene. I've created a new handle here on my auxiliary pivot point at the front of the toe, which is going to allow me to set up a manipulation for manipulating the front of the toe as well as the ankle. I can label these and change their color, which allows for easy recognition in the viewer. Now that I have my left foot effector, you can see that by manipulating it, we're still going to get that rotation through the foot. We simply add the ankle effector to the manipulation section of this handle, and now by selecting the handle, I will be manipulating both of these objects. Handles are a very powerful way to extend MotionBuilder's control rig in a very intuitive fashion. Let's take a look at another feature we have in the character setup. This is the floor contact system. The floor contact system is an integrated way to control a ground plane for your character. You can see by activating this floor contact system, my character's foot will not pass through the ground plane. It also takes care of all the secondary toe animation or articulation of the foot. This also works for hands and fingers as well. New in MotionBuilder 6 is the ability to repurpose or reuse control rigs. For instance, I have a keyframe rig that I've created and set up here inside of MotionBuilder with advanced controls that I've created for manipulating the hands with sliders. You can see that the different fingers have different sliders associated with them, so I could keyframe hand animation. What I want to do now is I want to have this control rig drive my character. I simply have to drag and drop the control rig onto my character, and MotionBuilder will adapt the rig to the size and proportions of my character. This gives you the ability to create very powerful rigs and reuse or repurpose them over multiple characters. Let's just go through and hide off our default rig that we created. Some of the new keyframe enhancements in MotionBuilder 6 include a new keying workflow with the notion of FK or IK keys. We're going to create a short walk cycle using the pose controls. The pose controls allow us to copy and paste poses on any character inside of MotionBuilder. The first pose we're going to paste there is going to be pose 1. And now what we're going to do is we're going to set an IK key on the right heel of my character. The reason being is when the foot approaches the ground, we want that to have an IK interpolation between the first key and the next key so the foot remains planted. Let's move ahead in time now and paste our second pose. We're going to match the translation and rotation on our character so that the character will actually move forward like so, and you can see the right heel should remain planted there, so we're going to set another IK key. On the left heel, though, we want to have a nice FK interpolation between the first key and this current key. So we're going to set an FK key. This new keyframing workflow gives animators the control that they need on individual body parts to choose the interpolation in between keys. Pose controls also allow us to mirror poses, giving us the ability to create, for instance, this short walk cycle only using 2 poses. We're going to continue to go through and paste these poses. You can see I'm going to paste my second pose here and set another IK key on the heel as the foot should remain planted on the ground during this animation. The last key I'm going to place is going to be on the first pose, which is going to be a replica of the starting of this animation. That way we're going to be ensuring that we have a complete looping cycle. Let's take a look at this walk cycle now that we have. You can see it's going to be a perfect loop because we've matched the first pose and the last pose. You can see how using the FK and IK key workflow, it's very easy for us to control the interpolation of different body parts in our character. Let's go ahead. We're going to extend the character's walk cycle by essentially copying and pasting the keyframes. One of the new tools you can see we have in MotionBuilder 6 is 3D motion trajectories. So any selected object, you can display the motion trajectory in the scene. I've just copied my keys. And what I want to do is I want to create another pose which will hold the last position of my character. This is going to allow us to extend our walk cycle using a new tool called the Move keys. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to copy the keys and then paste them, which is going to extend my walk cycle. But because these are global keys, you can see my character is going to go back to its original position and restart the walk cycle from there. But we want this to be offset or extended forward. So we'll select the keys that we want to offset. Then what we're going to do is we're going to paste that pose, which is the end of our first walk cycle, and then we're going to use the Move Keys tool. This is going to offset all of the keys that we have selected based on that manipulation that we created. Let's take a look at this again by rotating our character. So I'll select the character and his heel, and we're going to do a rotate around operation, which is going to rotate my character based off the position of his heel. After we've done this, we're going to select the keys that we want to offset, and now by using the Move Keys tool, you can see that it's created this offset throughout the selected key group. Move Keys is a very fast and efficient way for us to offset groups of keys. Another big addition inside of MotionBuilder 6 is the Dynamic Editor. The Dynamic Editor is a high-level animation editor which allows us to control the interpolation of keyframes on individual objects, body parts, or full-body characters. For instance, you can see the motion trajectory of my character's wrist here as we play this back. Let's use the Dynamic Editor to go through and edit the interpolation of these keyframes. To do this, we're going to replicate my character's wrist effector so we can see a copy of the original motion as well as the motion that we're going to be editing. I'm going to change the look of my duplicated marker simply by going into my Properties view, selecting this marker, and we'll change the properties for it. We're going to change it from a sphere to a hard cross like so, and just change the color. So my red cross will be the original motion, and my blue effector point is going to be the motion that I'm changing with my Dynamic Editor. Let's take a look at the Dynamic Editor itself. To do this, I simply select the key and go down into my Dynamic Editor. The Dynamic Editor essentially creates a normalization curve, which allows us to change the interpolation over multiple channels or multiple F-curves. So for instance, here we're working on a full body character. So this normalization curve is going to affect the keys for my full body character. You can see by adjusting the angle or weight, we're actually changing the interpolation of my character over time. By adjusting the velocity, for instance, we can change the speed at which my character is going to reach this keyframe and then move away from it. The dynamic editor is a very powerful way to edit animation data on characters or elements in your scene without having to go into the low-level F-curve editor. The next thing we're going to look at is the ability to squash and stretch your character. MotionBuilder 6 boasts the ability to essentially scale any part of your character's FK system. I'm just going to select the spine of my character as well as the head, and we're going to go onto a separate layer here where we're going to just keyframe the scaling attributes. I'm going to set a couple keys that will essentially zero out any scaling, and in between these keys, I'm going to scale my character up to kind of stretch the character. To do this, we're going to use a volumetric scaling and simply scale my character up like so. I'll set a key here, and we're just going to copy and paste this key in between my original keys to give my character kind of a squash and stretch type walk cycle now. Let's play this back and take a look at the result. So you can see now we've got this very squashy, stretchy look to our character. An advanced situation we have here is our character interacting with a prop. So we've got our character who jumps up onto this circus ball, and what we want to do is we want to have the character try to balance himself once he's reached the top of this ball. To do this, we're going to use two handlers which are going to help us manipulate the character with the ball. One of these handlers is going to take care of rotation. By selecting the rotation handler, I have the ability of rotating the circus ball with both of my character's feet together. This maintains the relationship between the feet and the ball, locking them down. The translation handler allows me to move the ball and the character together. I'm going to go through and offset the arms and set a key, and then rotate my character back to give the effect that my character is actually trying to balance on this circus ball. So you can see by rotating with the rotation handler, I get to rotate the ball and the character's feet together. I'll offset the arms again to again give the effect that my character is trying to balance himself on the circus ball. And then we're going to play back the result of this. So you can see now we've got the effect of the character is trying to maintain balance on this circus ball. We can copy these keys and paste out a few versions of that. So we'll just paste these keys again. And we'll play back the result. You can see that my character now is going to be uniformly going back and forth. What we want to do is we want to offset portions of my character's body so that it's more of a secondary animation on the arms. To do this, we simply select both wrist effectors, and we're going to change our keying mode to body parts. This will allow us to affect just the keys on the arms themselves, and we're just going to offset these keys slightly. This is going to give us more of a natural motion or secondary motion in the arms, making it look much more realistic as my character trying to balance himself on this ball. Let's take a look at a final sequence that we've keyframed. To do this, we're just simply going to switch takes to our final sequence and activate our camera switcher, and then we'll bring in the set that we have, a nice little circus set that we've created